Hello Internet, I am the Hero of Julios with another episode of Preparing for One Piece Set 3. In this episode, we'll be covering the blue cards that are coming here, and I will be a little upfront about this. I am tiering these cards and giving my opinions on them based in the context of the deck they are intended for. A lot of blue cards this set involve trashing a lot of the top of your deck. I mean completely destroying your deck, trying to get to 0 cards as fast as possible. Because of that, a lot of blue cards might not see play in other blue decks because of the leader cards specifically for this blue set. So let's start off with the blue leader card coming out in set 3, Nami. Nami is an East Blue leader, a blue color obviously, and 5,000 power and 5 life. What's more interesting about her though is, as an additional rule, when your deck reaches 0 cards, you win the match instead of losing it. Her Dawn 1 ability is when your opponent takes damage to their life through the attack of this leader, you may trash 1 card from the top of your deck. The goal for Nami seems to be almost a solitaire-like state in which you ignore your opponent while trying to get rid of as many cards from your deck as possible, through the use of drawing, trashing, milling from the top of your deck. However you do it, the goal is to get to 0 cards, because as soon as you hit 0 cards, the game is over and you win. Moving on from Nami, we'll touch on our vanilla cards for blue this time around. We have Mary and Genzo. Mary is a 1 cost to play, 3,000 power with 1,000 counter, while Genzo is a 2 cost to play, 4,000 power with 1,000 counter. For both of these guys, I'm gonna be honest, they are completely dependent on East Blue support. If, Bandai decides to go further with blue, East Blue, then these guys will see a lot of use, potentially. If not, they're just going to be thrown to the wayside. So, if you don't care what vanillas you're using in your deck, and these two guys are your favorite characters, then by all means, go ahead and use them. Otherwise, it's just 2 more vanillas to add to your packs. For our first 1 cost character, Bandai thought it would be funny to send children into battle with the Usopp Pirates. 1 cost to play, 0 power, counter of 1,000. Their on-play ability lets us add up to 1 Usopp from our trash to our hand. They bring Usopp back from your trash, that's basically it. So, if you accidentally trashed your Usopp using your East Blue cards or your Soga King, because Soga King also counts as an Usopp, you can get them right back into the match. Otherwise, I'm going to give this card a D tier with strong growth potential if more Usopp cards come out. Or heck, if Usopp gets a really good leader card and happens to be in blue, then these guys might actually see a lot of support. As of right now though, I don't really see them being used in any decks. On the opposite, we have Kaya, a 1 cost to play, 2,000 counter with 0 power. Her on-play effect lets us draw 2 and trash 2 from our hand. 2k counter is great. Draw and trash is great. And considering a ton of blue cards let you bounce your own characters back to your hand, this card is an easy way to wipe out your deck for Nami's win condition. But I think that due to being able to cycle through cards quickly, this card might actually see use in other blue decks as well. I am going to give Kaya an S tier because the ability to control and manipulate your deck, and not to mention constantly being able to redraw for only 1 Dawn, is a fantastic effect. And I'm continuing on this roller coaster of ups and downs, or should I say downs and ups, with Yosaku and Johnny. 1 cost to play, 3,000 power, no counter. However, if you have a Dawn attached to them, if your deck has 20 cards or less, this character gains 2,000 power. I think this shows us the intention of the Nami leader card. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't think Bandai's goal was to actually have you ignore your opponent and mill yourself out. I think the goal was to get your deck down to 20 cards or less and have these low-cost cards become insanely powerful. It's a 5k during your opponent's turn for only 1 Dawn, and 6k if it's your turn, because there is no your turn restriction on that ability. But they have no counter power, which is a minus, and sadly, I think this card is going to be on a back burner for quite some time. Unfortunately, boys, I'm gonna have to give you D tier. Moving on to our 2-cost cards, we've got Gaimon, a 2-cost to play with 0 power and 1000 counter. A lot of 0 power cards coming out in blue this time around. I would again kind of attest to your opponent being ignored while you're trying to just get rid of your deck. If he had a trigger to play him, I'd say he may be usable. When you deal damage to your opponent's life, you may trash the top 3 cards of your deck. If you do, place this character in the trash. Unfortunately, the effect required to use this card is just so specific and it only gets rid of 4 cards altogether. You'd be better off using Kaya twice or hitting your opponent with a powered up Zeph, Usopp, or Bellemere, and getting rid of 7 cards instead of 3. Maybe run 1 or 2 if you really like Gaimon, but unfortunately, I'm gonna give him D tier. He's too easy to destroy and way too specific in what he's required. Continuing on with our 0 powers, we've got Boodle, 2 cost to play, 0 power with 1000 counter. His on KO effect is you may trash the top card of your deck, and he himself is a blocker. And honestly, a blocker is a blocker, simple as that. 0 power, 3000 power, doesn't really matter, they all get taken out by the likes of Robin, Kiku, Whitebeard, Who's Who. I would like to say that the on KO ability is a you may, not a you must, so it is entirely possible to use Boodle in a non-milling blue deck. Overall though, I think he's got the consideration for the future if you just need a 2-cost blocker in your deck. He's really no different than trying to use any other 2-cost blocker. And rounding out our 0 power plays, we have Nojiko, a 2-cost to play, 0 power with 1000 counter. Her on-play effect is, if your leader is Nami, return up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less to its owner's hand. The power to bounce a 5 cost for only 2. This is a perfect defensive card for a deck trying to deck itself out. This card will only be good in Nami as it is restricted to the leader, but it's otherwise a great card. I'm gonna say Nojiko is a B tier in the context of the Nami deck, but overall it's unplayable in other decks just due to the leader restriction. Moving on to our 3-cost characters, we'll start off with Karen, a 3-cost to play, 3000 power, 1000 counter blocker. With an opponent's turn ability, if your deck has 20 or less cards, this character gains 3000 power. As a 6k blocker for only 3 Dawn, though some restrictions apply, this card is great for the final stretch of the Nami strategy. However, other blue decks might just be better off using Hancock from the starter deck, considering she has a trigger that lets you play her, and a blocker's a blocker if you're not playing Nami, because your deck is not going to get below 20 if you're playing other types of blue, save for Ivankov. On the note of playing other blue decks, we have Patty, who I honestly feel would have more use in other blue decks than actually being used in the deck he was made for, as a 3-cost to play, 5000 power with no counter unfortunately. His on-play effect is, if your deck has 20 or less cards, you may return up to 1 character with a cost of 3 or less to its owner's hand. If you're playing Nami, just use Nojiko. You'll get more for your Dawn, and you'll have a counter in hand in case. Other blue decks probably won't get their decks low enough, save for Ivankov, but Eva already has the ways to get rid of characters that are in his way. Honestly, I'm going to make him a C tier. He would probably have been B in my eyes if he had counter. From here we move on to the great Captain Usopp, our first 4-cost character. He is a 4-cost to play, 5000 power with no counter, and has Rush. But if he has a Dawn attached to him, when your opponent takes damage to their life through the attack of this character, you may trash 7 cards from the top of your deck. This effect clearly works for the Nami deck, and until we get blue cards that play from the trash, it's probably only going to be in the Nami deck. I will say though, it is B tier for being a blue rush card, which is a great surprise factor against your opponent, and if he successfully lands a hit, that is a huge chunk of your deck and a big step closer to your winning strategy. Our other 4-cost is Bellemere, 4-cost to play, 5000 power with 1000 counter. She has an on KO ability that lets you trash 3 cards from the top of your deck. And she has a Dawn 1 ability. When your opponent takes damage to their life through the attack of this character, you may trash 7 cards from the top of your deck. Yes, this is the exact same ability Usopp has, but she has a nice KO ability which works as a failsafe in case of jet pistols or anything of that nature. Honestly, I give Bellemere an A tier for being one of the fueling factors to both Nami's backstory and her deck. The only 5-cost character we're getting this set for blue is Zeph. 5 cost to play, 6,000 power with 1,000 counter. Just like Usopp and Bellemere, he has the Dawn 1 ability of when your opponent takes damage to their life through the attack of this character, you may trash 7 cards from the top of your deck. But he has this lovely on-play ability that returns up to 1 character that costs 3 or less to their owner's hand, and you may trash 2 cards from the top of your deck. So even if you are not going for a milling strategy, playing Zeph in a different blue deck will still let you bounce something without trashing cards from your deck. That's the beauty of the you may instead of the you must. But in the Nami strategy, you can use Zeph to bounce Kaya back to your hand and then plop her back down for more shenanigans. You could use it to pull up a character like Nojiko that you want to rebounce an opponent's character. There's a lot you can do with Zeph, and for that reason, I think he is going to be an A tier card. This is also probably the best card for the Nami strategy due to the fact that Kabaji is no longer an available card for regular tournament play due to the current ban list. And our final character card for blue is Sogeking, a 7 cost to play, 6,000 power with 1,000 counter, which is nice for a secret rare to have. This character is also treated as Usopp, and his on-play ability is return a character that costs 6 or less to their owner's hand. Then, draw 2 cards and trash 2 cards. So he bounces a 6 cost, draws and trashes 2 cards, and counts as an Usopp so you can get him back using the Usopp Pirates. Unfortunately, I feel like this card is a little outclassed by the same cost Doflamingo from the starter deck, but he does let you cycle through some dead draws. Not to mention, he does have counter power. I think this card is slept on. I think he's going to be an A tier card, and plus I love this little bit of lore on the card because, as we all know, Sogeking and Usopp are such good friends that it is rather hard to tell them apart sometimes, so the game just allows us to treat them as the same character. Speaking of Usopp, our first event card is Usopp's Rubber Band of Doom, a 1 cost to play counter card that lets up to one of your leader or characters gain 2,000 power during this battle. Then, you may trash the top card of your deck. Its trigger is draw 1 card, and then you may trash the top card of your deck. A 2k counter for 1 is pretty standard, and the card specifically saying you may lets it be used in non-milling decks. I think its trigger is pretty good, and any chance to cycle through unneeded cards is very helpful in a card game. Overall, giving him an A tier. Our next 1 cost event card is Gum Gum Giant Gavel, a counter that lets us trash 1 card from our hand to give up to one of our leaders 4,000 power during this battle. Then, we can trash the top 2 cards of our deck. Its trigger effect returns up to 1 character with a cost of 4 or less to the owner's hand. This may only be good in decks that rely on discard like Nami and Ivankov, but it's got a pretty decent trigger as well. A good way to surprise an opponent by getting rid of one of their attackers. Plus, this is as close to Radical Beam as blue might get for a while. I'm giving it B tier because it only allows you to use this power on your leader, not on a character, so that's probably what's going to keep it a little bit lower. But blue is not without a shortage of really good event cards. For example, the 3 cost Sanji's Pilaf. Its main effect, draw 2 cards. Its trigger effect, activate this card's main effect, which is draw 2 cards. There is nothing to say here except that this is a good card. It's Arcane Focus from Hearthstone, and it's Pot of Greed from, Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's Bill from Pokemon. It's 2 cards drawn, and we'll probably see at least a 2 of in almost every blue deck from here on out. Any card that lets you draw more cards is an S tier in my book, especially when there is no drawback like having to trash those cards. Continuing on the blue hype train, we have the 4 cost event card 3000 Worlds. Its main effect lets you place up to one character with a cost of 5 or less at the bottom of its owner's deck. Its trigger lets us place one character with a cost of 3 or less at the bottom of its owner's deck. Bottom decking effectively removes a card from the game, unless you're facing Law, who can search through his whole deck, or Nami, who is currently milling through her whole deck. This card is going to see a lot of play in blue, as it does what blue does best, getting rid of threats without the risk of counters to stop you. Not to mention, once blue and black get together and black can lower costs, 3000 Worlds could get rid of much larger threats. This is an S tier, due to most blockers being 5 cost or less to begin with, and not to mention, well, like I said, the aforementioned dueling with black. This card could get rid of even the biggest of threats for only 4 Dawn. If you're a collector like me, there are 6 alternate arts to collect if you're including the Doflamingo Wanted card, and one of them is the manga card for this set, being Sniper King himself. I predict that the Soga King will be a very expensive card, no doubt about that, but he's not as popular of a character as Shanks or Ace were, so I don't think he'll cost any more than those 2 will be after they, level out from the fear of missing out price. If your goal is to sell it, you should probably do it as soon as it comes out rather than sit on it and hope the price goes up. Overall, the point of set 3 blue is to deck yourself out before your opponent can get rid of your life stack. I can see why this was an issue in the Japanese meta, as you're effectively ignoring your opponent while playing solitaire instead of engaging with the enemy board. Kabuji got banned in the United States before this card even became an issue, so I'm not sure what the meta holds for Nami here in the States. I know at least a few people will try this strategy, myself included, but I don't know if this will be winning regionals anytime soon. But that's just my opinion. Let me know in the comments what you think blue's gonna be and if it's gonna be your main deck for the current meta. Regardless, thank you for watching as always, and I will see you in the next video. This is the Hero of Julios, Xing out.